The moment is now. I got into blockchain in about 2017, 2016 while I was at Stanford. Today, we've got it, right? We have favorable regulators on stage with us telling us exactly what we need to be doing to be within the law. We have legislation passing. We have insane adoption by large institutions. I think the interesting thing that people get wrong is that token prices are not doing well. And so people feel like it's a winter, but it's not.
What are your thoughts on the evolution of agentic models and the convergence with these new payment rails?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this category. The crypto ecosystem understood that there needed to be a space for like a sovereign, permissionless, non-censorable, agentic interactions, right? And so we've been building that infrastructure somewhat on speculation, right? And so Ripple has been a really interesting story, right? They were the absolute first to launch an altcoin. And I think their strategy now, they have this fortress balance sheet. They are going to, by hook or by crook, use that balance sheet to really bring businesses onto their platform that already have distribution and volume. And since they have great technology and great adoption across the community, I think they really have a fighting chance to make the Ripple ledger a very important one for the institutions that they bring on. And those are going to be focused in the enterprise or institutional financial space.
What's going on, family and friends? We're here at ETHDenver, an official ETHDenver side event, and I've got the man behind the curtain, Steve Willinger, the general partner at Stanford Blockchain. And you know what? I'm very thrilled to be here. I've been following this community for a great time. They've put on a great production. Carolyn Pham just came on stage. Matter of fact, Steven just interviewed her. So we'd love to hear what that experience was like. But before we dive into that, tell me what's going on about, well, one, how you got in the space, how you got to becoming the general partner of Stanford Blockchain, and to be the man behind the curtain here at ETHDenver.
So Steven Willinger, I started my career at Google. I built things there, but I went and got my MBA at Stanford, and that's when I switched gears to investor. My career took me to Capital One, their ventures team, and then I led the Coinbase Ventures team for a few years before starting my own fund, which is Blockchain Builders, where I'm a general partner. And so Blockchain Builders has really embraced the Stanford blockchain ecosystem, and we help operate all these things you're seeing here. So the BAS event, which you're at right now, which we've been running for 4 years now, we teach a course on blockchain entrepreneurship at Stanford. We also run the Stanford Blockchain Accelerator and a number of other things, right? But we really want to make it as easy as possible for the amazing talent at Stanford to start blockchain companies and be successful.
There's something to be said about the Stanford community. You guys are birthing some geniuses. I've come across a lot of the talent coming from that community, especially in this blockchain ecosystem. In between Stanford and Wharton grads, you guys are at the top of these blockchain fintech firms. Now let's talk about your experience, if you don't mind, from transcending from Google to Coinbase Ventures to where you're at today. Are we where you thought we would be when you first started the space?
Yeah, absolutely. The moment is now. I got into blockchain in about 2017, 2016 while I was at Stanford. And then you could roll forward and predict a lot of what's happening now, but the timing was very unclear. And we're seeing it now, right? There's mass institutional adoption. Stablecoins are being used for a massive amounts of payments and value flow all over the world. The primitives that we invented that were originally just for gambling are being used for critical financial assets and are growing rapidly. So
the future of investing is brought to you by AI. Meet Mangrove, where machine learning meets market dominance. Mangrove's mission: empower every investor, retail or institutional, with tools to help you thrive and grow your accounts no matter how the market moves. Mangrove is purpose-built by a team of data scientists, quant strategists, and traders focused on real-world fundamentals empowered by real-time artificial intelligence. Their platform represents a shift in financial technology, taking the kind of predictive intelligence once reserved only for big banks and putting it into the hands of everyday investors. It's not just about access, it's about empowering regular people with smarter tools for real-time decision-making. In a world of noisy data and volatile markets, Mangrove doesn't just surface trends, it contextualizes them. By combining AI with macro fundamentals, it helps users filter the signal from the noise and navigate through market turbulence with conviction. Because alpha shouldn't be a secret, it should be smart. Join the future of finance, scan the QR code on the screen, and visit mangrove.ai today.
I couldn't be more excited. My career, when I left the MBA program, I went to Capital One Ventures because it felt a little early. And so I was very focused on fintech in that era, kind of 2018. When I joined Coinbase in 2021, it seemed like the tides had started to shift. And even then it was a little early, but today we've got it, right? We have favorable regulators on stage with us telling us exactly what we need to be doing to be within the law. We have legislation passing. We have insane adoption by large institutions. I think the interesting thing that people get wrong is that token prices are not doing well. And so people feel like it's a winter, but it's not, right? I think there's a couple things at play here. But one is like, it's hard to predict where adoption happens and like who's going to be successful. And I think we're seeing a lot of the players who have geared up to support large financial markets be successful. And also, I think that the time will come for all those other assets, right? It's just the market isn't good for the speculative assets when there's so much amazing traction going on right now.
As we move into this utility phase, on the topic of other assets that have been tokenized, let's focus on private equity and the fractionalization of some of these assets. What do you think the proliferation of these secondaries markets looks like as we move into this sound regulations?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be an interesting one to watch play out. I think there's going to be like a barbell of how public equities and to a certain extent private equities are tokenized and how they manifest in people's daily lives. I think in the US, where there's already a large market for public equities, we're going to see like a very regulatory first adoption, and that's actually going to favor the large institutions who already have distribution in this space, in this space, and they're going to improve their operations using blockchain.
We're rolling out our next gen trading technology. We're moving our markets into cloud technology. And we're also providing technology to 130 other markets around the world, including crypto markets that use our technology in trading, post-trade, with surveillance, other solutions. So that's kind of a market modernization theme. We do think blockchain technology can really streamline post-trade processes across the world, which then, of course, frees up capital. So if you do it right, we can actually make that an opportunity to deliver more capital into the system.
But there's going to be trickle-down effects. Once assets are tokenized, we're going to find ways for the already existing crypto ecosystem to interact with tokenized equities. And that's going to improve things like collateralization. That's going to kind of improve capital efficiency for a lot of folks. So it's going to make the regulated large U.S. equity market much better. It's also going to give much better liquidity to private equity. On the flip side, there's a whole part of the world that has very poor access to these equities, right? Because they're not in the U.S. and these things are difficult to access overseas. And then you're going to see some players who will find ways to tokenize these equities and make them more accessible in a permissionless way. And I think those two markets are going to grow somewhat independently and perhaps even at odds with one another. But eventually, I think there's going to be a merger because underneath it all are going to be the same assets. The regulatory side, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing today, is going to see like the volume and the value grow first because it just already has such great distribution. But I think they're both going to grow. And ultimately, we're going to end up in a world where, like, hopefully in some way they're interchangeable.
Wow. So much to unpack there, Stephen. I'm sure many in the audience are just thrilled at some of the insights that you just shared as well. I believe that we're moving into, like you just mentioned, this utility phase. I'd say the adoption of these secondary markets are coming into the fold. Here at your event, you have booths, market participants, Chain Opera AI, which they're leveraging agentic models and new solutions. I mean, we're on the bleeding edge of tech. Before I let you go, what are your thoughts on the evolution of agentic models and the convergence with these new payment rails? Let's call them stablecoins as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I love this category. I think it honestly felt a bit early until like a month ago, right? So the crypto ecosystem understood that there needed to be a space for like a sovereign, permissionless, like non-censorable, like agentic interactions, right? And so we've been building that infrastructure somewhat on speculation, right? As you've seen probably in the past month, we've had Claude become very popular, and suddenly there's millions of people who didn't realize or understand what like an agentic AI could look like, and think that there could be a deployment model that wasn't hosted by one of the frontier model companies. But now, lots of people are running their own agents at home on Mac Minis. They're going to realize that they also want those to be hosted potentially on a blockchain. And so you're going to see an explosion on two vectors. One, different like hosting methodologies for agents, and two, like payment rails are absolutely critical. It always seemed like unbelievable that like OpenAI or Anthropic, if they were hosting agents, would not build their own payment rails and be able to use existing systems, and that was going to be fine and scale for them. But there's going to be a whole world of agentic builders and agents that need their own payment rails that aren't intermediated by the large frontier model builders, and so those are going to thrive in the crypto ecosystem. It's still early, right? X402 is a very exciting like standard that Coinbase released and is being adopted, but volumes are still pretty small, to be candid. But the seed is there. I think that's going to grow a lot now that we've actually had this boom in true self-hosted and eventually sovereign agents. And we have a great panel on this later in the afternoon. I forget the exact time, but I recommend checking it out.
I hope to. I have to actually run back to the hotel, move from my next room to the next because I'm part of the creator program for ETHDenver. I came a little earlier than anticipated. I wanted to be here. Before I let you go, you've mentioned Coinbase. Carolyn Pham spoke on behalf of MoonPay. You've got other great leading companies represented. I saw Nexus CEOs here. Who I don't see here is a company like Ripple Labs. I'm a big fan of. What are your thoughts on Ripple Labs and the XRP ledger, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny, I actually sat down with Chris Larson, who's one of the founders of Ripple, a week ago in the class we teach at Stanford, right? And so Ripple has been like a really interesting story, right? They were the absolute first to launch an altcoin. And I think their strategy now, they have this like fortress balance sheet. And they are going to, by hook or by crook, and sorry, this isn't from Chris, this is just from me and my take, so I don't want to conflate that. Use that balance sheet to really bring businesses onto their platform that already have distribution and volume. And since they have great technology and like great adoption across the community, I think they really have a fighting chance to make the Ripple ledger like a very important one for the institutions that they bring on. And those are going to be focused in the like enterprise or institutional financial space. Now, I'm not like an XRP bag holder. I admit I don't track their tech that closely, but like they have like one of the best executive teams in the space. And while, they might not be spending as much of their time like, going after retail crypto users, I think like in this era, that's actually, the right strategy, and they have every chance of doing well.
I appreciate that. Did Chris drive you around in his new car?
No, Chris showed up in one of his big SUVs with his security team, and he did an awesome job educating our class on sort of the pitfalls and perils of starting a business in a regulated industry. But he's also an amazing philanthropist and a big like a political donor and influencer. And so I think one of the most interesting things to talk to him about is just like, hey, where are the power structures in Washington and at the state level, and how those are going to affect crypto? Great guy.
Yeah, I heard Elio's CEO on stage talking about how they didn't leave the states, and basically because of that, they're not forced, but they're working with the DOJ. They're working with these government agencies to improve, or I would say, codify potential new laws in some sense, or frameworks. Is there something to be said about those that didn't leave the U.S. and stood their ground and fought here and kept building?
Yeah, I mean, what a battle for all those companies, and bless them for doing it. I mean, the tides have turned for them, and they have a huge advantage if they have been, building to be regulated and have clean operations. Right, they are the first partners that the big institutions in the space are going to look to work with, and so I think we owe all of them like a huge thank you, right, for like helping build the jurisprudence to support positive regulation in the space. And now I really wish like all those players, Coinbase, Kraken, BitGo, Ripple, I wish them all the best, right? Because they really did a huge amount of work to make the U.S. an okay place to build in crypto.
You've got a great sense and awareness and understanding of the market, where the tech's going. Stephen, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing your time with me. For those that want to engage, learn more about what you're doing at Stanford Blockchain, participate in your ecosystem, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, the easiest way is to just follow Stanford SBA on Twitter, and we announce almost everything we do. We also, by the way, I'd be remiss in saying, we also support a lot of amazing founders. They're all the ones hosting the booths here. And so we also post a lot of news about our ecosystem founders from Stanford. So follow us on Twitter, and you'll be able to be on the invite list for the next event like this. We open source a lot of our content from the accelerator. So if you're a builder, we'll make that available to you. And there's a bunch of other great stuff. So follow us on Twitter, Stanford SBA, and you'll be in the fold.
Now, for those that want to follow you as a thought leader in the space, Stephen, what's the best way to do so, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar. Just on Twitter, follow S Willinger, so SWILLINGER on Twitter. And I also post a bunch, and it's tied up tightly with the Stanford SBA handle. So that's where you can find me.
Amazing, amazing. Appreciate the interview. We've been constantly battling the space in this.
It's a busy event, yeah.
It is a jam-packed event. The Base Denver is the place to be, an official ETHDenver side event. Again, Steve, thanks for sharing your time with me, and congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much for coming and being part of the event. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.